Welcome back to week 6 of my faith journey in the wilderness. For those of you who are not caught up on my story, in a nutshell, I relocated to the Carolinas from the DMV for a job opportunity in December, only to later be maliciously terminated in March. I'm sure this was done out of spite for a number of reasons, but you can watch my series to learn what those reasons are. This week is week 6 that I've been trying to figure this whole ordeal out and muddle my way through. I find it important to document this journey, not just because I'm out in the wilderness with no one to turn to but God, but because this hasn't been my first trial and I'm sure it's not going to be my last. But God has always, emphasis on always, brought me through. And as hard as this journey has been, I want to stay encouraged, encourage others, and reveal to the world just how awesome God is. Week 6 was hopeful, week 6 was strong, and coming off of a discouraging week mentally and financially, I decided to apply what I obtained last week. After watching Pastor Norful's sermon, I decided to change the trajectory of my prayers. I stopped asking for things and started asking for forgiveness. Now, this was harder than I anticipated because I still found myself asking for stuff here and there, but you get the point. I started asking for things like free me from old habits and negative attitudes. I pray for revelation. Reveal to me what is it necessary for me to reach that exceedingly abundantly beyond what one could ask for type of prosperity. Direct me to my purpose. Direct me like you directed Moses. If no one has read the book of Exodus, I highly encourage reading the book of Exodus because literally the way he directed Moses was just completely unbelievable and giving him every word of what to say. But needless to say, I offered myself as a living sacrifice. Allow me to pour my energy and strength into obeying you, God, because somehow I felt as I continue to obey God, I feel like he'll continue to be a part of me. And his promise in Psalm 46:5 is that God is within her. She will not fall. And if I'm being completely honest, this was probably the first time in 6 weeks that I had asked God for forgiveness. I have to say, when we find ourselves in situations where we feel that we've been wrong, it's easy to believe that we don't need forgiveness because after all, someone did something to us, right? But it's definitely important to confess our sins to God because the fact of the matter is that just being upset about the situation is sinful. Being fearful about the situation is sinful. Me harping on the situation is sinful, and we're not even going to discuss the revenge that I want. Only God can teach me how sinful it is. Now, in typical fashion, I began my week with my spiritual sis, Melody Alyssa, and she taught me a good strategy for studying the Bible, which I did use later on in the week. But more importantly, she acquainted me with the book of Esther. Now, I have yet to dive into the book of Esther, but in trying to familiarize myself with the text, I went to my study Bible and read the intro, and it read, Esther and Mordecai were able to save their people, but only because God planned everything perfectly. He put them where they needed to be. He gave them courage and wisdom. God can't be seen, but he is always working for the good of his people. Now, this reminded me of last week when I gave a few of my testimonies, and thinking about all of the testimonies that I had previously, it gave me the revelation of Romans 8:48, I believe it was, where it mentions all things work for the good of those who love the Lord. But we have to keep in mind that the word says all things work for the greater good of those who love the Lord. And literally all of this stuff worked for my greater good. Them pushing me out on leave from work, basically gave me time, just enough time that I had needed in order to support my mom through her radiation treatment. Then with me feuding with them, and them forcing me out on leave, that prompted me to start applying for new jobs. Now, about 5 years prior, I had created a 5-year plan for myself. And the end goal for my 5-year plan was to become a practice administrator. And literally, the gig that I landed next was a practice administrator, I'm trying to tell you. Now, my good sis also dropped so many other good gems within this video, like
What the enemy meant for evil, God turned it and worked it around for my good. And so that just speaks, I don't know, of just like how God moves and how something can just turn on a dime, right? Like God can truly turn something around in a moment, and things can change quickly. It's giving he's a God of suddenly.
Now, I found it very of God-like to come back around using my spiritual sis to remind me of the seed that he planted in my head last week with Romans 8 and 28, but to also remind me that he is a God of suddenly and he can turn things around quickly, and that I need not to be worried. Now, as I continued throughout the week, Tuesday, Wednesday, I really didn't do anything. I just continued to meditate on his word, specifically Psalm 46 and 5, and also Jeremiah 33:3. Call to me and I will answer and tell you great and unsearchable things you do not know. I'm pretty sure I ended up reading Jeremiah at some point, Jeremiah 33, and I was also meditating on Jeremiah 33:11 as well. I will restore the fortunes of the land as they were before. Now, I just took these scriptures stood out to me, and I felt like this is God letting me know that he is going to direct me, and needless to say, anything that I feel has been taken away from me, he is going to restore it with so much more. Now, remember, over the course of this journey, I've been trying to make it a case in point to read a chapter a day, and I haven't been completely consistent with them, but needless to say, I have been doing it for the most part. And during this particular week, I was in Exodus. So on Thursday, I read Exodus 19 and 20, and these are the things that stood out to me. Now, one of my biggest prayers always is for God to keep his hands on me and for him to never leave me. I never feel like I want to go through a day in life without God, because I know that I cannot make it. I know that he sustains me, and I know that he is the only way that I've made it as far as I have through so many of the journeys and in the trials that I've gone through. Now, if you also remember, well, you probably don't know that, but if you remember, earlier in the week, just Monday or Tuesday, I was praying for God to reveal to me what is it that I need to do in order to prosper in a way that I am receiving this exceedingly abundantly, more than what one could ask for or an imagined type of prosperity. And here it is, he leads me to Exodus 19, 5 and 6, letting me know that if I obey him, then I will be of his most prized possession. And I did not catch it then. Remember, I'm about 10 weeks late in my diary in terms of just editing. So it took for me to go back in order for me to, kind of catch it. And that's one of the things that I find most beautiful about doing this whole video diary. Now, although it's showing that it's Friday, a new day, we're going to just continue to talk about Thursday because I didn't do anything on Friday. Very important side note. Now, what I have yet to disclose is that on March the 3rd, I actually sent in a prayer to the prayer line, basically revealing or praying to God how unhappy I was with this job, okay? Now, this date is very important because March the 4th was actually my 90-day mark, and I was contemplating as to whether or not I should just resign on my 90-day mark and let her know, hey, this isn't working for me due to some of the various concerns which I've discussed in previous videos. But she pretended that everything was okay and that we would be able to work through my concerns just by doing X, Y, and Z. Then 2 weeks later, literally exactly, she fires me. Now, another thing that I have yet to disclose is that one of my passwords is "this is my Exodus." And literally, this is my work password for things. And I didn't just start using it at this job. I used it at my previous job as well. But the point is that is one of my passwords. And I had no idea of the details or the story of the book of Exodus. I literally had just started using the password based off of the song, "This is my Exodus, this is my Exodus." Okay, so back to the story at hand. So the other chapter or the other scripture that stood out to me in Exodus was Exodus 19:15. Now remember, I have basically in the beginning of the week, I was praying to God and I offered myself as a sacrifice. But in offering myself as a sacrifice, I realized I can't offer myself as a sacrifice and continue to do the same old things that I have been doing. So, and that kind of set in my head a little bit, but me coming across the scripture, Exodus 19:15, confirmed it. Now, for anyone who doesn't know, verse 15 comes off of where basically this is 3 months after God has and Moses has led the Israelites out of Egypt. Now, this is the first day, 3 months and 1 day after they've been delivered from Egypt. And God comes to tell Moses, hey, I'm going to come down and I'm going to talk to them, the Israelites, through a cloud so that they will only put their trust in you. You make sure that they cleanse themselves over the next 2 days prior to me coming down, and you make sure that they don't touch me. They don't touch the mountain. They don't touch me. They have to be consecrated. So basically, Moses goes back to them. He tells them, hey, you're going to have to consecrate yourself. You need to, purify yourself. And in doing that, he tells them to wash themselves, and he also tells them to abstain from having sex. Now, prior to this point, I had not been abstaining from sex for any particular reason other than I just didn't feel like having sex. I just didn't feel like there was anyone worthy of me having sex with. However, now after this experience in life, I just honestly feel like, one, God is the only man that is in my life that is helping me through tough times and challenges, and I personally feel like that is who I need to be committed to. And so moving forward, I've created this covenant with God that I will be abstaining from sex, in order to basically consecrate and purify myself until we meet again, or until I find my husband, whichever one comes first. Two, I'm not about to be out here making God mad, blocking my blessings for nobody that's not helping me. Because I need all my blessings. And if this spiritual warfare is as strong as it has come up against me, I definitely need God on my side throughout this journey of life. So I will not be blocking my blessings just out here having sex with nobody all willy-nilly and stuff. It's just that. The other passage that stood out to me was Exodus 20:23, where God tells Moses to tell the Israelites, do not make any gods to be alongside me. Do not make for yourself gods of silver or gods of gold. Now, what a lot of times we don't understand is that when God speaks of idolatry, he's not just talking about like idols, human idols. He's talking about things. Sex can be an idol. A job can be an idol. Jewelry can be an idol. Things, food can be an idol. Vanity can be an idol. And for a really long time, I firmly believed that I idolized my career above all things. And I would always say, if I ever lose anything, as long as I have a job, I feel like I can regain it. And really and truly, that's really not the way that I should have been thinking. And I kind of touched on this in week 1 of my faith journey. God knows. I firmly believe that God knows what we idolize and what our fears are. And like I said, I've come across a number of obstacles in my life. I nearly lost my life like twice. And like, yeah, if I'm being frank and honest, like losing my life is probably not one of my biggest fears, or not the scariest thing in the world to me. But I will say that's like being in life and not being able to afford what I want to afford or what it is that I need to be able to afford. I don't like financial problems. I don't like money issues. Um, I don't really like none of that. And like God will really like
like that is what you fear, I'm taking that from you, and now what?
Meanwhile, I had no real understanding of idolatry or idols or the seriousness of idolatry when I made this video. Now, week 6 really hit a turning point late and Friday, like Friday evening, when I ended up losing one of my big clients that I had scheduled early on in the week, and it was just like a big ticket client. And so when I lost that client, it set me back in terms of reaching my financial goal a great deal. And so that really bummed me out. Like, I just started losing my momentum, and I was just like, I need to just give up on focusing on my financial goals. And I was just like, I'm gonna just let it be whatever it is. And so that sent me into a funk, really and truly. And even though I had got 2 other clients, I had got the clients through Groupon, so it just generated very little revenue because Groupon takes like majority of your money. Saturday of this week was important because that's the day that I started having dreams about past things.
Be careful. He's telling you where not to come.
That's true.
You're lying. I want you to, before you leave this mountain, I want you to go home in your mind.
This is Smokie territory. He came over there, sat next to me, letting them niggas know where not to come in. That's why them niggas come and talk to me. Why did you let that happen? Oh, boy.
Don't mind me, y'all. I'm in there listening to Dr. Miles Monroe, and that man triggered a flashback from probably like 2 weekends ago. But back to the subject at hand. So Saturday, I started to have dreams. I had a dream about my director from 2 jobs ago. Now, at the time, I really didn't know or understand what it meant. But as time progressed, I eventually learned and just gained more insight in regards to the matter. And I'll share that with you later on in the weeks. So in digging deep, just trying to maintain my faith and continuing to be strong, of course, I wrapped my week up with church. And it was nothing short of amazing. Now, in attending my local church, the pastor kicked off the sermon kind of with a reminder that I had mentioned early on in first week 1's video, and me just kind of declaring that this whole ordeal is just being used in order for God to push me into something greater that he wants me to have.
Whether you got Jesus with you or whether you don't have Jesus with you, if you're ever going someplace you've never been before, you can expect to experience a storm. Are y'all hearing this? I don't care how much you speak in tongues. Storm. You can shabba, yabba, dabba, do. Storm. If you're ever going to experience any season of transition in your life, any season of next always comes with a storm. A prerequisite for your next is a storm. And because we're going someplace we've never been before, a storm's got to come along with it. A storm in your life doesn't mean disaster. When you got Jesus with you, it just simply is telling you next. That's an indication that you're closer than you think.
Now, in typical fashion, I did come home and I went to virtual church with Pastor Smokie Norful, and he was talking about ways to connect with God. Now, his 3 previous sermons was people, the word, prayer, and then this week was focused on worship. So when he originally started, it made me feel like I was on the right track, because I do feel like I'm worshiping God and like revealing my testimonies to people through my video diary. Now, I'm not even gonna hold y'all. Pastor Ravel, he motivated me, and then Pastor Smokie Norful, he kind of made me feel a little defeated. Like, he just made me feel like I'm not going to be able to live up to God's standards. And I was just like, if this test gets like a test that he tested Abraham with, like, I don't know what I'm going to do.
And from this, we glean the definition or description of what worship really looks like. I defined it, but I got to describe it. Worship is obedience. Worship is not about your music. It is the willingness to obey what he has commanded. He was saying, give me credit for everything I own and everything I've done. Whatever you think is the most important thing to you, God says, I need to be more important than that. Bring me your glory. The thing that causes you to puff up with pride, the thing that makes you the most happy, the thing that causes you to feel like I have everything I need, bring me your glory. He says, my glory will I not share with another. In other words, I'm not going to be in competition with anybody. How can we, the creation, ask God, the creator, to be in competition with things he has created? At the conclusion of the matter, God tells Abraham, I know what I'm asking for. I'm asking for the best of your time, not the rest of your time. I'm asking for the best of your service, the best of your sacrifice. I'm not asking for just anything, but bring me the thing that you love the most. Bring me your glory. Then he goes on in the same verse, and he asks him, he says, not only do I want you to bring me your glory, but bring me your best.
Now, for those of you who don't know, there's a story basically about Abraham, who was a really old guy, and his wife Sarah wanted a baby, but they were so old that they thought that they weren't going to be able to create a baby. And God actually ended up allowing them to have a baby. And so, in having the baby was Isaac. And so after having the baby, God came to Abraham and asked for him to basically sacrifice his son, bring him his son, and offer him as a burnt offering. And Abraham did it with obedience, got up early to do it. As a Christian, I just really don't know if I'm at that point yet. And then it just kind of caused me to question my situation. And I'm just like, okay, it just takes me back to when I was saying, for a really long time, I idolized my career. I really idolize my independence. I really value that. That's what gives me glory. And I'm just like, am I supposed to sacrifice all, what do I do? Am I supposed to go homeless? That's what it just brings me to thought. And I don't understand. I just feel like I don't feel like I can be that. Am I supposed to be that obedient? If I was to go homeless, I'm supposed to be happy about it. I don't think that I've reached that point as a believer, or not as a believer. I believe it, but I don't want to go through that. And when I say as a believer, I mean, yes, I believe that if I was to go homeless, that he would bring me through, but it's just again, I don't want to go through that. And so, in summary, I just feel like this week alone brought me to the realization that I have a lot of work to do in terms of my heart posture, because I'm just not to that point yet. And it's not to the point where I'm a believer, but I'm not a believer. It's just to the point where as though I would not be able to do something like that or experience something like that and be happy or still be indifferent about it. All right, you guys, so that was week 6, and what I just realized is that I used a video from last week in this week's video, but don't condemn me for it because I'm not gonna redo this video. But needless to say, that is week 6, and I want you guys to drop down in the comments below and let me know, where are you in terms of your level of obedience in this Christian journey? Like, do you think that you could do something as sacrificial as sacrificing your child that you have committed for so long